Hi everyone, welcome to the next series in Why I Became an Astrologer with AstroCollege. And today we're joined by some fabulous horary astrologers, and they're going to give you a run through as to how and why they became horary astrologers. Now we have Reuven and we also have Elena. And as it stands out, just so everyone knows, is that both of these lovely people are instructors at AstroCollege. Reuven is in what I would call, what would you call it, Reuven? You're sort of learning the ropes as to the curriculum. So he will be able to teach it within the Asia Pacific region, I should say, for time zones. Elena has been with us quite a long time. And the point of this this particular series is to find out why. Why did they become astrologers? Because Reuven is originally, from a horary point of view, one of Elena's students. So just so everyone to know. Also, his other profession is he's a pharmacist. Yeah. So you'd think to yourself, how did someone go from being a pharmacist to being an astrologer, or doing both? And the same sort of thing is with Elena. I mean, Elena tells me that she's basically been doing astrology most of her life since she was in her 20s. But she's also worked as an IT professional and also as a psychologist. So, we're talking about people, when you become an astrologer, you're not necessarily just an astrologer. And I think it was a lady, Susan Goodell, who's one of our graduates, who said that that's when it all clicked for her a number of years ago, when she realised she didn't just have to be a professional astrologer. Oh, you mean I can do both? And so what did she do? She used her finance knowledge to become a finance astrologer and runs a very successful business. So I'm going to, right now, I didn't even introduce myself, but I hope that people know. I'm Luke Bailey, who is the CEO here at AstroCollege. And in part of this whole process, we are literally looking to create, a what I would call a safe, highly educated astrology education program, which has been established for the last 30 years nearly, and maintain that into the future. And this is why it's really important for us to have the right people on board. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And I think Reuven and Elena have been chatting. Reuven is in the Philippines. Elena currently is in Russia, doing some work over there, but she normally resides in the US. And Reuven's going to take over and just give us a run through as to why he became an astrologer, and he's also going to just lead some of this conversation, and I'll get out of everyone's hair. All right, Reuven, over to you. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Luke, for the kind introduction and for this special podcast. For everybody's knowledge, I'm from the Philippines, and it's already morning here, and probably some of you who are already watching here, it's probably midnight or late or early morning. So I'm a pharmacist by profession, but I also do astrology. Sometimes it's a combination of both, but I do these two things together. So the funny thing about my exposure to astrology, so we're going to discuss how I got into astrology, is that I was very fond of things that about mystical or spiritual stuffs. I dealt with the tarot since year 2018, and then delved into more of the spiritual matters like energy healing, meditation. That was my first curiosity that I was involved into. I always had the interest, or rather the curiosity about astrology, but the most likely exposure I have with astrology is more on what the internet is offering, and also at the time, basically, I learned astrology coming from tarot practitioners. So I don't say it was a very serious practice, but it aroused my curiosity. I was very interested into it. However, in the year around during the pandemic years, that was the official moment that I had started learning astrology. But it was more on the side of modern psychological astrology, and most likely we often do the ABC style of method wherein, Aries is equivalent to the first house, right? And it's equivalent to Mars because Mars is being ruled, Mars rules the sign of Aries. So that's the kind of thing that I was exposed to. It's more of psychological basis, which is actually very good and very profound. And and by the way, I started that to officially study here in the Philippines through astrology because I was invited by my Reiki. If you know Reiki, it's an energy healing methodology or system in ancient in Japan. And she invited me to why not Reuven study astrology in the astrology where the school is offering. We have some schools here, mystical spiritual schools that offers this kind of things. And I did enroll, and I did happen to like it. And because I was already immersed, I think the course program somehow lasted for almost a year. And then I started buying different books coming from different authors. Then I somehow saw this kind of impression of a different kind of technique in astrology that I don't really know. And somehow I find it very, very surprising because it doesn't somehow connect with the thing that I learned in the past. And then eventually, I think in the class, because I was in part of the class there, a teacher who was a friend of Elena, her name is Lana. So she was somehow there as our like an assessor of our interpretations, and I found her different style of doing things. Then we became good friends, really good friends. And then I started asking her about things that and then and it was a time it was already year 2022, so I met her around the year 2021, and then since I'm getting this information or rather curiosity about horary, and at the same time it was here in the Philippines during the 2022 was a year of our election, and I was very curious who might win the election, the presidential election. But I know asking the person, I told her, I referred to her as Teacher Lana, and she's a Ukrainian. I'm worried. I asked about her about it, but I also want to pull back what I asked her because Ukraine and Russia have something to do with each other, and in the Philippines we're also having political rivalry, so I don't want to bombard anybody. And then she told me, why not Reuven study horary? And then I would like to introduce you to one of the good teachers, best teachers, and that is Elena. And then it was in the year 2022 that happened. Then I began to promote the class to some of my colleagues, those who are also interested in horary, probably might interested in horary. So I think we were around. So I think I met Elena around somewhere in like this month in April, around April 2022, and then because I'm trying to collect some students, trying to promote the class, so probably we had already started our official horary class in the Philippines, and I think that was the first time to be taught in the Philippines because we don't really know about horror is. So it's around I gathered around I think 8 or 9 astrologers at the time, and we began studying with Elena around I think August of 2022, almost 4 years already. August or September 22 that we began studying from it. And then we realized at that moment, because it was, I think Elena always notices that we're always silent. I think she always messages me, where are you? It's because the reason behind it, it's not because the class was difficult. It's probably because we don't have that enough background yet at the time that we learned the horary part. And
how did you find that, Reuven? How did you find having not a lot of background in astrology and then having to be thrown into something like a topic like horary?
Well, I think because the background of what most people think about astrology is that it's always sign based, right? Or like okay, I remember very well back in my days when I studied Gemini, it's a communication and also it's an air sign, but as it is connected with the third house, so it's Gemini is also related with siblings or relatives. So it doesn't really work that way in horary
practice,
because
no.
in horary because we must learn that there's a separation between the signs and the houses, and although we know that there's a cardinal signs, mutable signs, fixed signs, we didn't really know how they function, or how, especially in timings, right? The specific in the matters of horary astrology predictions and timings. So we really don't have like that. So most of our awareness is really focused on how to interpret a chart based on psychology, like that, modern type of psychology. So it was a very, I wouldn't say it was a very challenging moment, because for me, for my part, I was the one who initiated that class and invited other people. I was very highly curious of it, and especially I'm also quite, very interested in these matters, to the point that right now I am really one who's practicing it deeply here in the Philippines and try to promote it more often than other branches.
Yeah.
That's the case. That's how I started with astrology, and then finally found to horary.
Okay. Are you still practicing as a pharmacist?
Yes, I still do. I still do practice being a pharmacist. That's also the dilemma. Just to be aware of, the problem we have right now in the Philippines, I think in the past couple of years, probably it's connected to the horror question, who might win the election. It's a really hot economy that we have right now. We know on today that the Strait of Hormuz is closed for some reasons, open and closed. We don't know the reality of that. We really are affected. 90% of our oils are coming from that. So you would expect that everything is rising up. So my job as a pharmacist, although I say that it is somehow, it's very, um, the thing is, it's become unstable. I've been some of my work, or the previous work that I had done, they closed, they laid off, closed, because the business was failing, and they really have to completely remove all the employees. Practice of astrology was the one helping me to pay my bills, of course, and also to do the things that I want, and especially with horary. Here in the Philippines, my curiosity and interest about horary is about finding lost objects and missing things. So, and people were, and I began to do it because somehow an influencer or a very well-known person asked me about her missing cat, and then I told her what can help her to find her missing cat, and I told her that this probably you might probably had news from somebody, or be able to find some um, clue on your missing cat after certain 2 to 3 days, or probably the cat will return around 2 to 3 days. And then she excited after 3 days. She excitedly responded to me, Reuven, I'm very happy to have conducted the horary with you, because we already found her missing cat, and that was one of the most profound ways that okay, horror is very somehow very amazing.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it gave you timing. That's part of what people don't realize sometimes, is that it gives answers. Do you find, and this is a question probably to both of you, but answer it over time. Do you find that people acting upon things can influence the horary outcome? So in other words, I'll give you an example. Say for example the cat, Reuven, depending on what shows up. If it's a situation where you go, no, the cat's going to turn up by itself, because you can see that, well, that cat's going to turn up by itself. But if it was a missing object, and you said, oh, look, this is where it should be, and this is probably where it should, go and look for it, and this is these are the signs. If they never do that, does that influence the fact they're just never going to find it, of course, because they didn't bother to do what they needed to do to find the object? Do you find that happens as well, that sometimes people are their own worst enemy, not necessarily the astrology gets it wrong?
Okay, if I'm going to answer that question, there's a lot of, it really depends on the person's initiative to look for the
Yes.
missing thing or object. In my case, since I've been doing this most of the time, I found out that even the horror speaks that it is can be found, or the object is very near, or I really point out a lot of things or direction like this, and the person is doesn't really know where he or she's looking at, or doesn't really know the place that she needs to look for to start first, or doesn't have that gut or that drive to find the missing object, that doesn't really give the results that he or she wants. So if you're just sitting around just wondering where it is and you're not really putting a lot of effort, it isn't going to be productive.
Not going to miraculously appear, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, the question is, most likely, it's much better that when there's a missing thing, you really have to look at first before you really exhaust all matters before you go to the horary. I have seen, like in my cases, like, oh, my cat has been missing for just one day, and then they come to me, and then I see that because there's the rules in consideration like early degrees, and then it really happens. The sign is early degree, and I told them, I don't think you and other things matters. The lack of considerations or we have the considerations before judgment, and if it doesn't fit in and the sign is early degrees, I told some clients that probably you are looking this in a hurry and you're not yet looking for it on your own effort. So it's probably best before you consult me to look for it. Then eventually, it's just not just after that I said that, just a couple of few minutes, the cat or the missing object was already found. So I
It,
think, yeah, that's the thing.
yeah. So there's obviously, the astrology is giving you an indication, but the profound thing about that, by the sound of it, is that even from when you say cast a chart, it's showing you that it's very near, or the person doesn't need to worry, or it's just gonna, hey, look, the cat's about to walk in the door. Don't worry about it. Just give it a bit of time before we start doing the whole chart. And sure enough, the cat turns up. So interesting scenarios. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Reuven? Because there's more you'll go into in a bit, but maybe we should pop over to Elena and get a little bit of rundown on yourself first, Elena, and how you started, and then we can go into a bit more detail about Horary itself. Could you give us a little bit of a rundown on what brought you into Horary? I mean, look, don't forget, this is, as you said, you've also been an IT professional, so you obviously worked in other areas. You also worked as a psychologist. Was that when you were working as a psychologist? Did you use astrology for that purpose, or was it more of a different thing altogether? Just give us a bit of a rundown on you, your history, and how it came about. Because people don't realise that astrology is something I believe anyway stays with you for life. You keep learning more and more, and it either becomes part of you as a profession, or it's used for personal use and you don't use it as a profession, but you use it for your own timing and things like that. So what about you, Elena?
Well, for me, astrology is my path of living, right? I mean, that's the best way of describing it. Of course, when I learned about it, when I started, I just fell in love, right? Oftentimes I get asked, how did I get engaged in astrology? And it was love, guys, from the first sight, because when I first learned about it, when I first got the reading, it was so interesting, so captivating. It really ignited me at that time, right? So I really loved it. But when I was a younger person, I had to work, I had to make a living. So astrology was more like my spiritual practice, my place to go to, because it gave me a lot of meaning. And I think that's sort of central to my path. Astrology is a spiritual practice. Astrology is something that gives meaning. So for a long time, it was something I learned when I had free time, and very much like Reuven, I ran to my home. I bought all the books that I could at the time. By the way, it was in New York, Robert, because I was living in New York. I just consumed. But I didn't have a teacher who would give it a structured approach. And then I met a teacher in New York City, and he was a traditional astrologist. So I was kind of fortunate in my practice that I was exposed to the traditional astrology, but to both, right? So I was reading, and I also had a structure that this teacher was proposing. But all of this remained a study, right? And I studied for about 10 years. And when I felt, I think when I felt, I don't even know how this transition occurred. I guess I felt that I accumulated enough knowledge. I felt more confident, I suppose, right? And so I started seeing clients. First, it was friends of friends, and then the clients. And I worked in the corporate at the time. And surprisingly, people, or not so surprisingly, people were very interested in astrology. So as I was a programmer, right, computer programmer, all the time people were coming to me and asking me questions. And already at the time, I started doing Horary astrology because I loved answering questions and I loved the practical part of it. But at the time, I did not have a training in Horary astrology because my first teacher, he was a natal astrologer. And so then later, right, so I practiced already, and then I had this great sense of satisfaction. I really didn't like my work, even though it was very lucrative, right? And so eventually I decided to become a therapist. And so I went to the graduate program, and it was a long study. So it took 6 years. And then I became a therapist. And so that connected better. In other words, I continues to practice astrology, but I also by that time I've gained skills, counseling skills.
Yeah.
And so when I became the counselor, I continued to counsel people, but then I had on the side astrological practice, and this continued for a while. And then the final part, which you met me at this point, right? Both Reuven and Luke. Roughly about 10 years ago, I was invited to teach, maybe a little more. First, I was at the Kepler College, then I was at the IAA. And basically, I can't tell you exactly, maybe the last 5-6 years, it's astrology full time. I mean, astrology, right? It's mostly teaching. I continue to counsel clients. These days, as you know, I'm very excited. I also participate in various scientific, actually today, right, in the morning of Moscow time, I participate in a scientific conference, truly scientific conference about astrology. Astrology is esoteric study. Astrology is a religious study. Astrology is a spiritual study. And I cannot tell you what joy it gives me, right? So that's the path, right?
That's awesome. Yeah. So you've been doing it for quite a long time, but it sounds like for you, Elena, astrology has been with you. You developed a level of expertise over time, which I think that just comes from experience. I always say to people, in astrology, time is your friend. It's not your enemy. Don't try and rush your knowledge, because a lot of your knowledge is going to come from experience and spending some time doing it. And now you're at a point where you've given away all of those other parts of your life and concentrating, because your love and passion obviously is astrology itself.
I could not separate myself from it, right? Like, I mean, for me, it's no longer, we will certainly talk about the business aspects of it, but for me, astrology is not just business, right? Or it's not just something I love. It's a part of I think it's a part of my spiritual practice. It's a part of my life. I mean, and actually, I'm curious about your opinions, right? Everyone, Reuven and Robert and Luke. I think when we choose astrology, or maybe astrology chooses us, it's something we cannot go without anymore. Would you agree? Like,
I totally agree
what's your relationship with it?
I totally agree with you. Just so everyone is aware, my introduction to astrology was I didn't believe it worked. So I went, nah, what a load of rubbish. But instead of, going, no, it's just a load of rubbish, because that's sort of what I was conditioned to believe, it was also partly what I was exposed to. And most people are just exposed to sun sign columns. And the occasional, back then in the 80s, it might have been someone had a copy of Linda Goodman's Sun Signs or Love Signs, and that was going around for people to have a read of. But other than those sort of little popular books, there wasn't much around. And I actually had to teach myself astrology. I was sort of given some photocopies out of an ephemeris, the planetary positions, and photocopies of a blank chart and table of houses and a book on how to do it. And it was like, here you go, knock yourself out. And that's how I learned astrology. And then I did what you guys have both said. I started reading book upon book upon book upon book. And then I found that I got a little bit sick of reading what I would call opinions. People wrote books, but they were opinions. They weren't leading me down a path of knowledge. They weren't leading me down the path of being able to understand the outcome of events, etc. And that's what my fascination is with what you guys have turned into a practice, which is horary. So where I sit as an astrologer, I'm sort of like your jack of all trades, master of none. Although I've got 50, I've now got 42, 43 years I've been doing it. And so when I say that, other people would say, no, But what I'm saying is I studied harmonics, which is now sort of branched out into vibrational, I use, and Robert will know this from when I do horse racing analysis, I've always been interested in how and why astrology works, and whether it's got a scientific relationship, a physical relationship to the planetary energies, which I believe it does, and I've got reasons behind that, but that's for another time. And so I've sort of, when I say analyze a horse race, for example, I'm using midpoints. I'm also looking at different factors of disposition and astrology rulerships, moon locations, moon influences. There's a lot of things to do with that particular moment in time in its analysis, and then cross-referencing it. You guys use a slightly different approach, but what I've done, Elena, is I've just taken a lot of, I would say, techniques. You know, you and I, as you know, Elena, I'll often say to you, hey, can you give me an indication when you think is a great time for this? What do you think of this chart? Because initiation of business ideas, initiation of things you need to get done, sending out that valuable email. You know, when is the best time to market? When is the best? You know, these are all things that the horary days can do, and do very effectively. I mean, remember, and I will get off my little soapbox in a second, but remember, we have someone like J.P. Morgan who had his own astrologer, and he actually, you know, invented the astrological watch. And he used to go to his business meetings when he's looking to buy a company or associated, and take down the time that meeting was held, give it to his astrologer, and then say, is this business worth investing in? And that's how he did a lot of his stuff. So he's known to be saying that, yeah, millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do as an outcome. So that's using a lot of the horary practices. Now, Elena, would you like to expand a little bit on horary as such, and your choices in why you chose horary over, say, becoming a modern I mean, you're a psychologist, so you're trained in that modern psychological understanding how people's, you know, you can look at a chart and you can see what motivates and what's going on with someone. But we're talking about a totally different branch where you're looking at outcomes of events, or when to start something, or, you know, what made you be inspired to go down that path and concentrate and now teach it?
Now, to be quite honest, I mean, there are different answers to this, but one of them, and I'll give you the honest answer, it's the power that it gives. And I don't mean power over people, right? I just think that horary gives huge amount of power in the sense of it's a very reliable predictive technique. We have to say astrology is predictive. And what disappointed me in modern astrology originally, it didn't give the same depth, it didn't give the same accuracy. And actually, clients were coming to me and asking me very specific questions. What will be my partner like? Who will I marry? This more along the natal astrology, but basically they were asking for predictions. And with my modern knowledge, it wasn't enough to give them the specific details. Mm-hmm. So I was drawn from the very beginning to the predictive quality. And when I discovered that horary astrology is so powerful and reliable, right, and it gives the really detailed information, it gives a lot of power.
Yes.
Reuven, what do you say? I mean, of course, it's useful to clients as well.
It's the real thing about related to the Hermetic principle, as above, so below, and most people do not really know that, because there much of the exposure coming from natal astrology or more than psychological astrology, that astrology has this physical components or material manifestations, and as a horary astrologer, you can able to point out certain things if it is going to work out or not, and also to point out certain objects related to the significators, the planets, and the sign. So that is the most amazing thing about the horary, about horary astrology.
Yeah, I tend to agree with both of you.
Oh, you know, everyone, and for the potential prospective students, if you're interested, right, in horary astrology, I would say it's a beginner's subject, right? Like Reuven was sharing, when we started and people didn't have the background, it was a little hard, right? Like it took some time to get to speed. So I would say it's an intermediate subject. However, once you're learning it, once you're mastering it, it's really precise, and it doesn't take as much effort, as much time as other branches of astrology, right? Like, for example, if I do solar returns or some predictions, it takes much more time. Horary astrology, once you master those principles, it's very fast, right? So another advantage, it's accurate, it's predictive, it's reliable, it's really helpful to clients. And once you understand it, you can quickly assess important questions, right? So that's also very useful if you are thinking of being a professional astrologer.
Yeah. And Elena, would you say that, knowing our curriculum at AstroCollege, IA here, that the basically, somebody who's, I would say, for me personally, I think if somebody is, two-thirds of the way through the natal studies program. So in other words, Reuven, you've seen the foundational part with Nat 1. You've been sort of working with Enid on that. And that gives a very good foundational understanding. And then you move into Nat 2, which is the planets, because really everything is ruled by the planets. And then we go into sort of some chart delineation and then aspects and disposition. Say after Nat 4, and you're getting into delineation. But those first 4 areas would probably give you enough knowledge as to how an astrological chart works. It gives you the traditional background as well as a modern view as well, because we base a lot of it on the whole signs charts nowadays, as well as crossing over with Placidus, which is the modern astrology sign house system generally used. But with Horary, if you're starting to use and you understand those whole sign system, then that's giving you probably enough background to start into Horary. So even if you're learning, say for example at AstroCollege, there's no reason why. I mean, yes, you have to follow, going through the processes to get your qualifications. At the end of the day, though, you could say, you know what, I've done my Nat 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to go over here and do some stuff with Horary. Do you think that wouldn't be a bad time even to start, Elena? You'd have enough information after,
I have to say, everyone, in my experience of working with students at IA, people going through our program, they were all prepared,
Yes.
sufficiently prepared. Maybe they didn't know traditional principles in great depth, but no one struggled in the Horary class. I think we have a really thorough and kind of step-by-step preparation. Our program is good.
Yeah. I tend to agree. I had another student who was on one of our students I heard was actually taking the course, which you missed last night, Elena. I know you're going to do that with Aswin on the Nakshatras.
Yeah, I signed up for the next.
Yeah. So what you're going to find is one of our students is in there, Liz, and she's doing it. And I've got the first recording of that, and they were having a chat prior. Now, giving people a bit of background, I hope Liz doesn't mind me saying this on here, but she said that she'd been studying astrology probably on her own for about 20 years, a little bit, and sort of knew enough stuff, but came in here. And one of the comments I heard her describing to Aswin was that why she was going to continue to study with us was because of what you just said, Elena. It put everything into, it cemented and put everything into an order. And it all of a sudden it started to make sense for her. I'm not sure if those exact are the words, but it's along those lines. And I went, yes. So she's a classic example of somebody who has been personally trained or classically trained in different ways, but hasn't necessarily followed a step-by-step program to go, aha. And what you just said, Elena, is very true. So the people stepping from say after they've finished their NAT studies, and especially if they finish their professional studies as well, and then they move into a specialist course like Horary, they're so well prepared that their ability to pick it up and work with it is nearly instantaneous. It's a lot quicker. Would you agree with that?
Certainly. And, maybe we should also highlight this point, Reuven. I'm curious about what you think. We talked about it earlier, like how each of us, we started our own journeys reading, and that's wonderful, right, to read. But everyone, nothing can beat a good structured program or a good structured teacher, because it simply propels you 500 years, 5 light years forward, right? You can study on your own, like you were just sharing, Luke, but it takes forever.
Yes.
And you can, but a good system, a good program, a good teacher can do wonderful, right? So that's why, of course, very important to find your teacher, right? Connect with your teacher, but the program as well. Reuven, would you agree?
Yeah, I do. I do 100% agree. When I entered the NAT one, the subject itself, I was hoping that probably if I was first exposed into this kind of, these lessons, learnings, I will definitely be more prepared with our horary class. But definitely having part of that moment, you're already guiding these new students, because there are also some students there that they did not know what do we mean by cardinal signs mutable, because in modern astrological interpretation, we don't really bother about knowing those modes, right? Or the elements. We directly go to the what does it mean with the sign of Aries? What does it mean with the sign of Taurus? Especially now, when you look at or search in on the internet, there's a lot of things going on. But in the classes, especially in Horary, and also with our courses or in our subjects, we really dig deeper to the foundations of astrology or how to define it principle by principle. So it's all also very connected together. And by the way, because I'm already very immense with Horary, it also helps you to understand the natal astrology. I had a particular client that I noticed a lot of earth signs. I mean, and there's a lot of Virgo or Capricorn or Taurus in his chart. And I told him, and the money significators there are there, like part of fortune, Jupiter, and the Lord of the second house. I told him probably might be very good in agribusiness or might be doing some agribusiness. And he did agree. He was doing agribusiness. So that's the thing. That Ori can help you understand more of natal. But I think for the people who they don't really have that kind of expectation yet of very descriptive and very detailed, they probably might get overwhelmed. So I often start first with a little bit of psychology, then adding more description. So this kind of way of technique of handling clients or students or whatsoever, I thought probably it would be developed more during exposure if you continuously doing it. But
Yeah.
having a background that has already a good good standing, a good methodology system, and a good teacher that is very proficient in that area, it's going to help you a lot along the journey.
Yeah, it's going to fast track. It's funny. People go, "Oh, hang on a minute. What? This whole curriculum is going to take me, X number of years to complete." And you go, "Yeah. What? You thought you were going to become a doctor in two? Did you think you were going to become? How long did it take you to do your pharmacy? How many years?"
Here in the Philippines, we only really our pharmacy profession here is Bachelor of Science. We only have four, but you have the option to study additional ones, but that only eligible here in the Philippines. So it isn't going. I really have to take more exams if I want to go to like that Australia or rather Germany or the US and different like here in the Philippines we have a basic course, then you can add up like a specialty course or specialty areas. But if we wanted to more go to other countries, it's different from a nursing
Mm.
program where they can directly go. Here, we really have to study more. For example, yeah, that's what earlier I said. And each country has their own standards. So,
And a quick question for you, Reuven. I'm not sure how it works in the Philippines, but here in Australia, we have a situation to say if someone's going to study pharmacy and they go through a university, the cost of that is quite expensive. Is it the same over
yeah,
there?
yeah, it's very expensive actually. It's more than what people have. In fact, in I my background is was very really come from a simple family, so it's really hard to pay my own tuition fees. But I want to be honest. Once I practice astrology because I'm now a pharmacist by the way, and honestly here in the Philippines, you're still like set aside by being paid. So you notice there in other countries there are a lot of Filipino healthcare workers. We migrate because we have more opportunity and want more money. And somehow, because if I practice astrology seriously, the money I get from it is much higher.
Well, that's sort of what I was about to say to you. It might sound silly, but it's not, and that is, can I ask from a Filipino, say in US dollars, or how much would it cost you? I mean, I know the standards of living and costs of things are different from country to country, but what would your whole degree in pharmacy cost you to do in the Philippines? Any idea?
How much the entire
Yeah,
costs?
yeah, approximately, even if it's just an estimate.
Since it's a 4-year program, and then we are, let me, that was early in my times around, that was 10 years ago
Forgot
when I was
already.
studying. Yeah, I think it's more than if probably an estimation of my time 10 years ago, and it probably might be cheap at the time. It's around probably 300,000 to 400,000 pesos, but that still depends on the school, some half a million pesos. So you just convert it from 60.75 US dollars dollars is much expensive than the pesos. So that's it. So it's much more expensive to study pharmacy. And then astrology is for, of course, since I'm an astrologer, I'm really, really serious about it. The challenge here is that because the peso is very weak and US dollars, the pounds, euros are much more expensive. So there are cases that I spent too in the pharmacy. I mean the in the astrology courses. So I think that's the gap now. That here in the Philippines, that's also the problem because we only very few serious practitioners of, especially traditional. I think we're only less than 5 or 3. And to be honest, I think the serious ones are only 2.
It's you and something else. Okay.
And the other one,
No competition then.
and other people,
Well,
self-proclaimed and self-studied.
So Reuven's world, your world is your oyster there in the Philippines as a horary astrologer. But why I was asking the question, because see, this is the thing. Like here in Australia, I don't even want to. I don't know. I haven't gone to the university, but I would say a lot of we actually have what they call a hex debt, which is you go to university and you end up with equivalent to a tax debt, and you have to pay it off over years and years and years after you've finished working. And so therefore you work, you do all the study, you try and keep yourself afloat, and then at the same time for the next 10 years after you've finished your course, you're paying it off. And that's why I sort of say with what, as an astrologer, I go, if someone wanted to put 3 or 4 years into full-time study in astrology like they do at a university, I mean, you're going to have a profession. You're going to be able to walk in doing the same stuff that you do, Reuven, what Elena, what you're doing. The only thing missing will be a little bit more experience, and that comes with time. So it's, when people say, can astrology be a profession? Why I became a horary astrologer, you two are living proof. You've got a psychologist and an IT professional on one side, and on the other side, you've got a pharmacist, but you're both choosing astrology over the top of other careers because it's making it more viable, I suppose, in some respects, and also something you love. You're working for your own time. Anything else you want to add to that? Because I'm just sort of, I'm just throwing it out there, but that's why I do what I do.
Well, I would say that path of professional astrology is a path of love. It comes from the heart, like we started, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we are drawn to astrology.
Yes.
I cannot not have astrology in my life, right? So it's almost not a choice, at least for me, right? You can speak, of course, for yourself. I mean, I must do astrology, I'm trying to say. But professionally, it's not easy in the sense that if you have big responsibilities, it's not a very stable field, right? We need to be honest about it, everyone. That's why we have other professions. Reuven is working as a pharmacist. I'm sure, Reuven, if you could do only astrology and counseling, you would forget about the pharmacy, right? So when I was able to forget about IT, I dropped it, right? And the counseling, I loved working as a counselor, but ultimately my heart and energy is in spiritual practice, right? Or in astrological practice. That's why counseling also became, I counsel a little bit, but it's a side thing now. So, but making a living with astrology is not easy, everyone. I hope I'm not going to discourage, but it's the truth. But it can be done with good preparation, of course, with desire to do it. Some business planning as well, marketing. I mean, I think we're all learning. Always, you continue learning astrology, of course, right? All your life. Look, you were mentioning this, but
yep.
I'm learning more. I've been learning more about business, marketing. I talk with both of you a lot about this. That's the part of working for yourself. But that's actually not only relevant to astrology. I mean, if you are working for yourself, it's more about being self-employed. Yeah. You have to know about business and marketing.
Totally.
Like that.
Yeah. I agree.
What do you think?
Yeah, I do agree. It's interesting because we have other branches of all different forms of branches of astrology. But one of our graduates, the other week when we did the Why I Became a Financial Astrologer and Graduate Day, and Susan Goodell came along. Well, Susan is also going to be working with me to set up a financial astrology course and teach people what she knows and how she uses it because really it's following the same astrological practices, but just focusing on the financial aspects. Now she needs people. She doesn't need the money because she's got too many clients. And what happened was, and this is where things blow up sometimes. I call it like it blew up because she had a lady come to her who was an astrologer and she didn't know for a consultation. And from there she was asked by that lady to go onto a podcast. And this is a lady called Helena Woods who does a lot of astrocartography, and she's got a very successful Instagram account as well as teaching people astrocartography. And having 97,000 followers after she did the podcast with Susan was inundated with work. And she said, I'm now booked out 18 months in advance, Luke. So she said, I can't keep up. So that's part of coming back to the college and saying, can we do something to teach the astrologers what I do so we can get more people out there doing financial astrology? So we're open to various, and just because you do horary doesn't mean you can't also cover financial aspects. But generally speaking, like anything, astrology really does have a, what's the word for it?
Specialization.
Yeah, specialization is the word I was looking for. So, like a doctor can be a general practitioner, but then he might go, you know what, I want to be an endocrinologist or I want to be a virologist, and you go into your specialty. And going into horary, one of the things I suppose from a business point of view, Elena, I noticed with you that, part of what people can do is they can ask you a question. It might be a 30-minute consultation. And people can book in for that type of thing, which is, I think as a horary astrologer, is that a fairly common practice? A lot of people just want answers to questions?
I would say so, yeah. At least in my practice. I get a lot of horary questions, yeah.
Reuven, you're the same because you're talking about the cat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how.
Yeah. Where's my wallet? Yeah, I've lost my wallet.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a lot of that sort of stuff. So that's sort of fairly, that's a great way of being able to help people on a physical level, understand and make decisions or get them through circumstances. I think it's a great practice. That's what I love about horary. Is there anything more you guys would like to add? Because I know we've been here for just under an hour. We don't have to stay here all night, but I think you've given us all of us a very good explanation as to why. Is there any other bits that you'd like to add or something to share about horary as a journey that really got you to go, you know what, this is the part of astrology I want to do? Anything you can inspire somebody who's an aspiring horary astrologer or somebody who's investigating it, what advice would you give them? Reuven, why don't we start with you?
Okay. So doing horary, it really gives you a lot of advantages as an astrologer because it's almost like you're getting everything just by learning the basics of horary. You can really already apply it, even if that you're more focused on natal. There's certain how you are going to delineate, synthesize on horary can also be applied to natal, and it can be more specific and even more detailed. Also, I'm also doing Astrological Magic, and doing so, learning Astrological Magic is much more. It's very easy to do it. Of course, the election part could be very challenging because there are a lot of things to consider, but that's the way how we are doing also in horary. So the horary practice also helps me to become more efficient and more specific in the way I do with Astrological Magic. At the same time, because in the natal part, when an astrologer focuses on natal astrology, it tends to be more broader. However, in horary, we can be more specific and be more detailed, especially if you're looking for, let's say you're an astrologer and you see that the person is very mercurial, and you already found a person who's very mercurial, or somebody who's very intelligent, eloquent, or businessman, somebody who's very interested in many things, and then you already found that person, and then you're curious if this is the one, then you can ask the horary about it, asking more details, so you can add more specificity on the questions itself, or what the person or what the friend or the client wants to ask. So you can dig deeper on the practice of astrology, and you have more specific details that you can able to explain, and you can able to really understand more of the concepts of other branches of astrology, like astrological magic, medical, and then also mundane astrology.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so that's a good reason as to why you chose to basically concentrate on this field. And what about you, Elena? What advice would you give to somebody?
I would say it's very similar to Reuven. First of all, with Horary astrology, once you master it, truly it expands your understanding of other branches. For example, I just started practicing mundane astrology maybe a couple of years. I was really focused on Horary and natal astrology and predictive astrology, but I got into mundane astrology and it just opened up to me because I truly understand the traditional and Horary principles. It didn't take much effort. Like charts speak to me, right? They open up. My point is, if you are serious about astrology and you learn the traditional principle of Horary astrology, it really will expand your elections, right? You will understand much more from this more classical point of view. So it expands your understanding. And I didn't have to I didn't have to study mundane astrology separately, right? I really get it, right?
Yeah. So just quickly, just so that, because there may be people here who are watching this that don't know anything about astrology, what's the difference between mundane and electional and horary? So if you could explain to someone who goes, I did horary, but it opened up the other.
So Horary is the art of answering questions, and in itself, it's a very modular, powerful system. As we were talking today, any questions that are meaningful to the person can be answered. Relationship, searching for missing paths, career, spiritual guidance, like absolutely anything, finances, anything, right? So it's really wonderful. Mundane astrology, astrology of the world and the politics. Right now we have wars going on, problems in the world. So mundane astrology helps us to understand and to predict, right? Reuven was talking about looking at the elections, right? How the country will operate. Anyway, it's predictions about the world, the events, right? That's mundane astrology. And elections is an art of choosing most favorable times for something, right? Start business, hold a class, and so on. So they're all very powerful branches of astrology. But for those students who are interested, you can start with whatever is drawn, bringing you in, or you're really most drawn to. But if you practice Horary, if you study Horary astrology, it'll really expand you in every direction, right? And later you can choose whichever direction you want.
Or like you, a combination, Elena.
Yeah. And I wanted to tell you, right, about specialization, right? Because if people feel like maybe it's a broad, that's a broad subject. But for example, I'm working on my YouTube channel, both of you know, and it wasn't my plan at all. But once I started focusing on mundane astrology and on financial astrology, my channel started to grow tremendously. So for everyone, there is a demand for certain, of course, people need predictions, right? Because we live in uncertain times. Always astrology was drawing people for predictive quality. Mundane astrology, financial astrology always draws people in. So whether you want to be a blogger, right, you do YouTube and attract, people this way, or maybe you want to do, predictions. Otherwise, it's really lucrative directions.
Yes, I tend to agree. And I think realistically, we're at the beginning of that journey astrologically. I saw Lydia, my partner, yesterday showed me a video, which was on Instagram. And it was a concert with Madonna and Sabrina Carpenter. I'm not I know Madonna pretty well because I'm a little bit older, but I'm not that familiar with Sabrina, but she's really popular now. And they were singing some Madonna songs together. Now, the interesting thing is, Elena, she sat up there and I could see her on the stage and she's talking to the crowd and she says, and this is a really important thing for Sabrina right now because she's a Taurus. And she goes, and the new moon is just about to move into Taurus. This has literally only happened yesterday. And so therefore, it's a really auspicious time for her to be starting this new project. So here's Madonna on stage talking about it. She then went on to say that at the moment we have 7 planets in Aries. She said, what's Aries? It's ruled by Mars, the god of war. And with the state of everything that's happening in the wars at the moment, what we should be doing is try and just get along and try and not let agitate. And she was talking and guiding in astrology. Now, when she said 7 planets, Lydia said to me, what do you mean 7 planets? I said, she's including Chiron. Because at the time, the new moon was happening in Aries and the moon was still in Aries when she was recording it. So what I'm getting at is you've got people of influence on an open stage talking astrological principles, and she's obviously got an astrologer who's helping her understand those things, or she's learning herself in certain forms from somebody. But what that shows me, and Reuven, you're probably more in the age bracket. Do you find that people in your age bracket, I say it like that, are fairly open to astrology in general?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very open.
Yeah.
But most likely their exposure is much more the most direct or rather diluted part of astrology.
Yeah.
So it would need more effort to expose them to more a serious type of astrology.
And that's where we're at here. And that's why we're doing this particular podcast. We want people to be able to understand that you can learn astrology, for personal use or professional use. I'm absolutely positive that Madonna and Sabrina Carpenter don't need it for professional use. They've got their own careers and make enough money elsewhere. But at the same time, they're obviously looking at when they go. Interesting that they've chosen the new moon and the moon going into Taurus, and she's a Taurian, to launch her new project. It's been timed by somebody, and we know that. So this is where the assistance and guidance can come. My point before with you, Reuven, was, what did it cost you to become a pharmacist? Yes, we all need our various careers, and often in life we go through changes. I mean, I was originally a wool classer. I used to go out to shearing sheds and class wool coming off a sheep's back. I was also involved in IT communications and sales and call center solutions. And I built a video distribution platform for real estate and real estate companies. I also was, got off the ground and sold a personal duress alarm system for hospitals and psych hospitals and prisons and workers. And I've had a huge background in various things, but I've also been an astrologer and an astrology teacher. I even wrote for magazine articles for 8 years in the 80s and 90s. So we all have various things, but one thing, like you said, Elena, once astrology entered my life, it's never gone. And if anything, the more time you spend, the better you get at it, the more you make positive decisions for yourself. What I'm really loving, Reuven, why I asked you that, was that when I was growing up, astrology was poo-hooed a lot of the time. It was sort of my age bracket. I would run a class, and there would be, out of 12 people, there'd be, probably 10 or 11 would be women. And their partners would be going, what are you going to that for? Now it's very, very different. And that's what I say. I think we're just on the precipice. And that's why we're, redefining AstroCollege to come into a form that people can learn at different levels. And we'll be doing more of that and launching the new college in about 4 days from now. So what I will probably do, I haven't decided, but I will probably be having literally at that time, which I think works out to be about it's a bit later actually for you guys. I think West Coast, Robert, for you it'll be like 11 p.m. at night when I'm launching it. So it's fairly late in New York, but it has been timed astrologically. And I think, Elena, you even looked at that launch date as well too, didn't you? And Reuven, I think you even looked at that launch date too, didn't you? And I think on Reuven's advice, I moved the time back 20 minutes to get some changes so that it would work a little bit better. So, here we have some wonderful professionals in front of me here that are also your amazing teachers and educators at AstroCollege. And I'd like to thank you both for your time. Any last things you want to say before we stop? And Robert, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, let's hear from Robert for a second.
He's sitting there listening to all of this. I thought maybe he might like to pike up because he also does other branches of astrology as well.
Well, I guess my interest in getting into astrology was really through events of my life up until maybe when I was about 20, right before my Saturn return, I guess. And being I guess being in Vietnam War kind of like opened my eyes to a lot of things. And then a couple of situations where losing a brother and, just kind of like, I was just searching for answers. And it seems like I couldn't really trust anything or trust the powers to be, people in power. I did have a very strict parochial education, and there's a lot of hypocrisy there. Going through my learning process, and then just going into war and seeing that things weren't really what they were supposed to be, or fighting for a purpose or a true purpose. It was just basically more for power and greed. And I just was wondering, like, where, I couldn't get any right answers. And so I had I had two aunts who were like into reading cards, and they kind of like just mentioned an astrologer in the city that I should go get a reading from. And he didn't really say too much for about an hour and a half or whatever. But he just said, like, you probably would be a good astrologer, and he wound up selling me about 10 or 12 books at that time, where it was a lot of money. It's over $100 back in the 70s. And I started reading certain things about my chart and just realized that there were things that only knew that about that, about myself, that I kind of like was doubting myself, and it just gave me a little more of this just some clarity about who I was and the ability that we have. So then I went to college and I started getting involved with on a psychological part of astrology, and I saw that it really works with your characteristics and traits and where your strengths are, where your shortcomings are, and I think it was a good approach as far as helping people get through certain things about who they are. And then involved in just doing a lot of things in the city, going to different sort of like all these different seminars and meeting different astrologers. Um, I got involved in a technique of astrology called Uranian astrology, which is basically was started by a German by name of Alpha Vita back in the during World War I. And it's funny that he developed, because he was in the war and he saw all these things happening. And if you looked at a regular chart, you couldn't really see why certain events were happening. So then he came up with this whole thing of, I mean, if you looked at a regular chart, there were, you couldn't see things. But then he developed a system of like midpoints and planetary pictures and the timing of things, and kind of like, made sense of certain events being a very why certain events happened. And I kind of like picked it up very, very quickly. Some people have a hard time picking it up because you're dealing with a whole situation of trans-Neptunian planets that were very difficult for most astrologers to accept. And So what happened was, since I was pretty good in my class, a gentleman called my teacher and was looking for a replacement for. He wanted only a Uranian astrologer to work uh, consult in his business. And I was the third Uranian astrologer that he had, which was very interesting because to me at that time, I looked at astrology more as a psychological part, but now I can see it really applied itself in the mundane situation So, basically what I did was just like write a lot of reports for him, daily reports, monthly, weekly, annually. And, they were like pretty, I see like how certain things, there was the right time to do things and the wrong time not to do things.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that, I was probably, he had maybe about 100 or 150 people that he dealt business with. So I would have their charts and compare it with him and things like that. So it was very intense for about a year and a half until he passed away. And and then I just took a kind of like a sabbatical for a while. I got into I was doing, had a spiritual teacher. So I was into meditation at that time. And, um, I guess by him, uh, well, I did an event prior, about 4 or 5 months before he passed away, and it was called Astro Disco. And I rented this disco club in New York City and had all these readers, and it was a really great event. And I didn't want to do it because there was only one time for it to be available, and but it was during a voided course moon, and I took the gamble. But it kind of like really everybody that went had a great time. I lost maybe about $2,000. But however, I just I when this business person passed away, I just took off for a period of time and went to India. But I should have came back and probably developed this Astro Disco thing, or just bringing people together in a great thing, a great environment, and well, a fun environment.
You might have just given someone an idea, Robert.
Readers there to do things. So then I got into I went to St. Bart's and to the islands, and I was doing a lot of charts there, and I was doing very, very well. And then I came back, and about 80, 83, about 80, 85, I got involved in a situation where I had to change my life and kind of like get a normal job. And eventually I got into, doing sales, from selling carpets to finally getting into the mortgage business and doing mortgage finance, mortgage financing for about 20, 25 years. But I always I kept my astrology in this, I always kept it up, and I wasn't doing it professionally. But then I got back into probably about 10 years ago. I just felt I really had to get back into it.
And here you are today.
So here I am, and I just have a lot of situations where I think it works, and it can really be a very helpful tool. Using it constructively to help people, and also to help the world. I mean, right now I'm kind of like doing a thing with a group of people. We're planning out the next 100 years of astrological cycles and trends, and trying to make a picture of like how what society is going to, where things are going to be manifesting over the next 100 years. And it makes a lot of sense. Uh, I think we're living in a very prolific time astrologically, with this Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. And the last time it happened was like 3,000 years ago, and the next time it's going to happen is another 3,000 years. So what we're doing right now, I think, is going to have a very, very prolific and significant uh, uh, bearing on how society is going to kind of like manifest over the next 3,000 years.
Mm.
And Horary, to me, the ancient astrologers used the Horary because when when you looked at 3,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, not everybody was not the normal people were doing were interested in astrology. The only people were the people powers that were the king and business people, and they wanted to know certain things about, what if the weather was going to be good, we're going to have a good crop, situations like that, or whether to go to war. Uh, when there's eclipse of the sun, when the king, if there's an eclipse on the king sun, that usually indicated that he was going to probably pass or go or or not be a king. So they wanted to know all these different situations. So to me, horary is like it's something that I always was aware of, but I would probably want to get more involved in it because I have a feeling that it's very helpful. Just like Uranian is very good at anticipating events and comes very accurate with events. And we did hit a pick 3 today, Luke. I just want to let you know.
Oh, good. Okay. So just so everyone knows, on another note, Robert, in the middle of everything I'm doing last night, he, you mind having a quick look at the three races for me? And I went, yeah, okay. And it wasn't simple because of all the planets together when you're picking horse race winners, it's a little bit different. We haven't done this with the horary side because it's possibly a little harder because there's, you could have 24 horses in a race. So we use a different technique. But Robert sort of, in amongst my late night last night, I went, and I said, look, here's my guesses here. And they were more like a guess in some ways, but based on the charts. So if we want to pick 3, that's good. So it means we got the 3 out of 3. That's awesome. So well done, Robert. Well, on that note, yeah.
And finishing that, I mean, there's so many people that want to learn astrology right now, and there seems to be such a strong interest, especially with the Pluto going into Aquarius. I mean, it's been going on. I mean, and there's another combination of planets between Uranus and Neptune and Pluto that society's been exposed to for the last 6 years, and it's been changing everything. And we don't see these changes right now, but like 3, 4, 5 years from now, with the Neptune will kind of like come in and show you like what will be happening. And I have to commend Luke in doing such a great job with taking an old website and really transforming it into like I mentioned. I guess yesterday you mentioned like the phoenix rising out of the ashes.
Well, the curriculum and the college has never been in the ashes. I think you're right, Robert. We just needed to modernise the website and set it up so that we can access that astrology a lot easier. These sorts of videos here will be recorded and available and sent out to people who've registered. But also just in regards to Elena, you've got a beginners, intermediate, and advanced horary courses, and they're available as a pre-recorded version. I also encourage people that as Elena does those live, join them specifically, because then you learn more about your own charts as well as during that process, and you become engaged in it. And Reuven, you would be one of those people that would definitely say that's the case. There's recorded astrology is great, not a problem. You're still getting the same teacher, you're still getting the same information, but you don't have the option to ask questions. You don't have the option to engage. Not everyone has the option to sit and attend a live class just purely because of, like we are today, time zones. Elena, you're in Russia at the moment, and we're up for a 4 o'clock start. I mean, that's tough. So if that was going to happen every week just so I could learn a subject, I'm probably not going to do it. I would go to the recorded version first.
I want to say one other thing. Electional astrology is also very, very important because I've done a few for some clients of mine, and I picked time for them to do certain things, and it seemed to work out very, very well for them. So that's another
important component. Yes.
technique of astrology is very important.
All right. Well, look.
They're connected. They're connected, everyone, right? Look, you were talking about a certificate program. It's new, actually. We didn't have certificate program before you came on board.
Yeah.
Look, so now everyone, you can do it modular, you can do it all together, and Horary and Electional Astrology, because they're
tied together. Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
And we will be running some more of those live courses coming up. I'm not sure whether Elena, we could do them again as intensive workshops or over a course. Obviously, courses tend to work, I think, a little bit better because you have time to absorb.
I think next should be the course, because around a few intensives, we can do it over the weekly, right? So people can have slower pace.
Yeah, that's right. It's not brain overload in 2 days.
Yeah. And I'm going to teach a predictive course for Chinese astrology, not door, but I'm very happy to repeat it for our school. It's a lot of fun, right?
That would be great.
Yeah. And Reuven can have, I was thinking maybe you guys, I don't know if you already talked about it, but the class in magic, astrological magic, extremely important, yes. Right?
Reuven is also going to be doing a seminar for us. It's behind time. We were supposed to have it out in March, but I've been so flat out with everything else that he sort of had to take the back seat, and I apologise for that, Reuven. But would you like to let everyone know quickly what that will be?
Yeah, I'm also getting busy with my pharmacy practice. So anyways, the course it's also an adjunct to horary practice, wherein you find the significators of thought, or why the person really wanted to go for a horary reading. It's more likely of a wow or surprising factor, because at the time that the chart was casted, there are no yet questions, but you already know the question. The astrologer knows the question already, so it's a more like wow. I say, okay, I already know as a querent, this is the question that you wanted to ask for me, and this would help me verify that the chart is actually true. And in fact, I'll be doing this for my practice because when people do natal astrology with me, they also do the consultation chart readings or the signifiers of thought or thought analysis, and they really are astounded by the efficacy of what were their really concerns are about. So I use that practice more often in my horary practice and also in my natal, just to identify what makes a person propelled to consult with an astrologer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for your input too, Robert. Thank you, Reuven, for all your time, and you too, Elena, for getting up at such a horrendous time in the morning.
Nice meeting you, Reuven. Very nice meeting you, Reuven. Elena, when are you going to be back in the States?
I'm coming back in a few days, everyone. So soon we'll be back to normal.
She actually thought she was going to be back by now, but it's been a little bit delayed.
Yeah, so, I thought you'd be back in the beginning of April, so that's okay.
Yeah, it's because of the book editorial and other things that I have to take care of. I'm still not done with the book editorial. It takes time, everyone. But I wanted to share with you. I don't remember if I shared with you, Reuven or Luke. I saw something really amazing, and that might be a good finishing note for our discussion today. One of my sons showed me that in the community college, there is a class in astrology. In an official college, a class in astrology. I'll send it to you.
Yes.
So, which means that astrology may be re-entering, coming back to the mainstream more. We were talking a little bit about it, right? So, I was very excited.
She wants to be going out there knocking on the doors of all the universities in the US. She wants to go out there and say, now, can we set this up as a university level course? The curriculum we have is university level. The grade and the way it's graded is. There's no question about it. But it's in the planning so that it may be an online course that people can do via an official university as well. You know, there are other hoops to jump through when you get into that sort of level. And me being based in Australia, it might be a little harder to manage, but we will be. The goal is down the track to do exactly that and open up that doorway, because one thing I am confident of, and it's one of the reasons I took on this as a project 2 years ago, and Elena, you will know this for sure. And that is that the curriculum and the college itself has probably one of the best education programs the world's got in astrology, if not the best. And I say it like that because the people involved, we have other wonderful colleges like Kepler, where you've worked before. Enid Newberg, who founded it, is helping me also rewrite stuff and teach here. And Enid, Reuven, because you've been working with her in the Nat 1, following her along. So, we've got people who have a vested interest in not one college versus another. I don't want that. I want it to be an astrology community, and that we teach astrology and bring it back to the mainstream, but make sure that people get a proper education, not something that's just fly by night, or could be, potentially a little bit dangerous to themselves if you don't understand it properly. You're only going to make silly decisions. The other thing we are launching, and I've got it set up, Michelle Marie, who is vibrational astrologer, which I'm working on that course for next year as well. This is just for everyone to know. And anyone who's watching, we are about to launch, because I've already done the first one, hosting astrology websites. Okay. The idea of that is for those, so she's amazed. She said to me, I didn't realize how much functionality you got here. I said, yeah. So that's something we'll also be promoting. The idea of it is that as students go through the program of learning, that they can set up their own website. And, yes, we have to pay a hosting fee, or they pay a hosting fee, but we take them into that whole business scenario. We've got the booking engine set up. I think, Robert, you're probably due to have a chat with our gentleman Anshul to help set up yours. So this will be something we promote, and therefore the idea of being able to support the astrology community, where websites become affordable with a lot of functionality, and they're connected into AstroCollege and the community, so you get referred out to you as an astrologer. And that's the whole idea. So we're bringing in some new innovative ways of doing it, making it very much online. And when I say it's not just a website, I mean, I'll explain. You get things like you got your own shopping cart, you got your own learning area if you wanted to, you've got your own payment gateways, you've got your booking engine set up, you've got your email marketing set up, you've got your contacts you can create, you build your whole database around it, all your social media integration, everything. So very, very powerful platform, and we're just getting started on that. And we're only going to be charging people, I think it's around $49 US a month as a hosting fee. But what you get with it, when you're not having to buy email marketing software, this one, that one, and everything else, your booking engine, everything's all set up, your calendar all integrated to it. It's very cost effective, and it will help people, start powerful businesses with not much of a capital outlay. That's the whole idea of it. So anyway, on that note, I think we should end this session, and I really appreciate it. We've gone a bit longer than we thought. We've probably gone for a good, when did we start? Oh yeah, about an hour and a half. That's okay, not too bad. I will stop the recording and say thank you everybody for attending, and we will see you again soon.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.